Hi there, it's the Great Griff, and welcome back. I'm joined by Peter Chesbrough, who investigates the news which has recently surfaced about a supposed Roman road network in Devon and Cornwall, the ancient kingdom of Dumnonia. We discuss the methodology behind these findings and talk about other relevant topics to do with the debate over the degree of Roman involvement in the southwest. Enjoy!
Hello, right. Let's get started on this. So this is the image we've all seen in the news recently about a Roman road network in Devon and Cornwall. Um, uh, this is the image that's been put out. It's the one we're all used to looking at. It's got some very interesting points on it, which I'll have a look at in detail. This has come about from the total coverage now in England we have of LiDAR data, which is absolutely fantastic. And I'm really going to have a go at that with my work as well. Everyone should look at that. It's absolutely fantastic. But this is what they're showing. This is what they say they found using this new LiDAR network and a computer model. So let's have a look at that, because computer model is a very interesting thing to say when we're talking about archaeology, which is meant to be about the interpretation of hard evidence.
Yes.
Right. So we'll go back to the beginning of the paper. You can find the paper online, Exeter University. So we'll have a look at this first image. So rather different to what we're used to with Britain's hidden history. The general idea of Romans in Devon and Cornwall is kind of odd. It's like they didn't come down here very much. It's always been the considered idea, and where in other parts of the country we're seeing that modern archaeology is in some ways coming closer in line to what things we talk about in Britain's hidden history. And how the Roman period in Britain was far more complex and nuanced than has been sort of said to us in the past. Here in Devon and Cornwall, they're kind of going the opposite way and saying, well, actually, there was a lot more going on than we've said in the past. And this Roman road network is another example of them saying, look, the Romans were here much more than people used to think. So it's very strange for me personally to be sort of arguing against the modern archaeology in favor of the more sort of the older views, But the older views really are based on the evidence. So this is what we have for confirmed Roman roads in the area. So the confirmed ones are the solid lines. So they're going up here. There's very little. There's some forts marked, and we'll have a look at quite a few of these, but there's not very many of them, as you can see, compared to other parts of the country. Yeah, and we've got some possible routes here. I'll talk about this one again in a minute, this route coming over here. But yeah, there's not a lot there. As I sort of said in the last video, the Cornish video, there's plenty of Roman artifacts found in Cornwall during the period, but in terms of military occupation, there's very little, and we don't have the same sort of towns. The big exception is Exeter right here, but Exeter's still in the east of modern Devon. This is kind of out the way from the heartland, especially from the mining heartland of Cornwall. And really, the tin and the other metals is why the Romans would have been particularly interested in the area. So let's go on and have a look at the next one. So with this new LiDAR data, they've been scanning this area for things that look like Roman roads. So they look for, the ditch either side, I think is the main thing that they look for. But, as we would argue quite regularly, how do we know how old this road is? Especially because from what I can tell from this paper, all of it comes from LiDAR data. So when I do my research for the mining stuff, if I spotted something on the LiDAR, I'd also try and spot it on the satellite data. And then I'd also try and get there and take a photo of it and see if I can see it, right?
Right. Right.
There is no evidence in this paper that anyone's actually been to look at this.
Oh wow.
I mean, they might have done, and someone, and hopefully other people are pursuing it and
Yeah.
investigating. But in the paper itself, there's no suggestion that anyone's been to look at it. And lidar data can also be misleading. Things can look like things, right? Very easily. So I'd like to see this followed up by more research, a lot more research actually, because I think it opens up way more questions than it answers.
We want to see boots on
And
the ground.
yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
And bearing in mind that first image again of Roman road network found in Devon and Cornwall. No, these red dots of is what's been found. That
Huh.
is what,
Yeah,
10% of what you see on that map.
absolutely.
That is what has been discovered as original, and I say physical evidence. It's not physical because they haven't been there and photographed it,
Yes.
let alone turn the soil over and seen if it's actually Roman or not. The rest of it has been developed through a computer model. Okay, so we'll have a look a bit more at that. So what are we talking about here? So this is where they're talking about the how they process the lidar data and the things they've spotted. As you can see, a lot of these things follow along the course of where modern roads are as well, which is what you'd expect to see.
Yeah.
Oh, one more thing before we leave this map. If you go to our Bardic code video, I can't remember if it's number 1 or 2, I'm talking about a very ancient way that traces its way up here, goes over the north of the moor, and then heads off up towards the rest of the country. The
Yes.
Sowerton Down cross is somewhere around here, right? So sorry, Sawton. Oh God, got me
We've
pronunciation.
all done
Bloody
that.
hell, I'll be in trouble, won't I? Sawton Down cross is around
Yeah.
here. So I think that was a week, maybe 2 weeks before this paper was released. I told you folks that there was a very ancient way that went up across here.
Yes.
So although this is nice to see confirmed by some lidar data, this is something that you would have, anyone who's interested in history in the area would not be surprised to see that
Uh-huh.
an ancient road has been found here. This is where the modern A30 goes as well. It's the best route through the area, which is why the modern road follows it. Makes sense.
Was that the Foss Way that you said it was called, Peter?
No, so the Fossway, as in one of the 4 royal roads. This is
Right.
the one that this comes down here, and I
Right.
believe Marshall has talked about tracing it down as far as here as well.
Okay. Wow. Right.
Right. So these are definitely roads which the Britons claim to have built long before the Romans
Mm-hmm,
turned up. Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. So that's the Fossway coming down here, and
Okay.
whether the Fossway took this route, it could just be lost to history. We might not know, but this is certainly a possibility. There's certainly writers who said they either took it from Totnes, and some say from St Michael's Mount, right through to Scotland.
Oh, huh. Well,
Right.
right. Yes. Okay.
But Totnes would be, at the end of it here, around this area. So right, they did some various things like blurring out the motorway so the computer model wouldn't just plonk its guess right. Oh look, there's a nice big flat bit. I'll put a road there. So they did a bit of that to make sure that the computer model wouldn't do that. They used various types of modeling that shows how people move on God, what am I looking for? They call them least cost paths. So basically, the best way to route through without having to climb too many hills or go down too many dips or stuff. They also used flooding data as well to make sure that they avoided places that are prone to flooding, like estuaries and things like that. Although I think, as far as I know, a lot of this data comes from modern models on flooding, and the topography and water levels would have been very different historically. So I'd be interesting to know how much that's taken into account. And then this gets to the one where we're going to sort of deep dive a bit more. and this is called the nodes. So the important points where they put it into the computer model, the roads need to connect up these points. These are the important bits. So we've got Exeter here. That's going to be a big one, right?
Yeah.
Now we've got Cowstock here as well, that I was talking about last week. And Cowstock is very prominent in the paper because the chief archaeologist at Cowstock Roman Fort is also responsible for this paper as well. Oakhampton's interesting because this is the one place outside of Exeter where there seems to be Roman a Roman town, you know, something that can be classed as not purely military, not purely for mining or something like that. It seems to be domestic, but not a villa.
Yeah.
And we'll look at villas in Devon and Cornwall in a minute. Won't take us long. Right, so let's have a look at a few of these places. Great. So where are we going to start? So where's this? The Old Borough. So Old Borough's down here, number 19. It's on the north coast of Devon up here, right? Old Borough, a square enclosure, some 44 meters across, so not huge, you know, not a big one, a fortlet. They've got here, Roman fortlet. Subcircular enclosure, 85 meters across. Excavations 1911 and 1960s suggest the site was briefly occupied in the 1st century AD.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
So good with another one. Here we got the Beacon Roman fortlet. Where's the Beacon? Here we go, number 90. So the Beacon is the other one on the north coast here, number 22. Okay.
Right.
A Roman fortlet briefly occupied in the 1st century AD, comprising of an inner square enclosure and subcircular outer enclosure. Excavations reveal 3 building ranges and the site of the beacon fire signaling point. So this is a very important place if you think about it on the north coast here. This is the Bristol Channel, the 7 estuaries up here. This is somewhere where the Romans would want to very much control the security of, and part of the suggestion is the reasons that these two were established is because of the war with the Silures.
Yeah. Okay. Makes sense.
Yeah. Hold on. Right. So this is Cowstock. This is the site that the chief archaeologist guy responsible for the road paper as well. This book outlines the discovery and investigation of a Roman fort enclosing an area of 2.1 hectares, which overlooks the Tamar at Cowstock in southeast Cornwall. Extensive geophysical surveys taking place alongside campaigns of evaluation, trenching, and area excavation. So this is modern excavations, right? So we can't look at, say, the older ones and say, oh, maybe there was some bias about the ideas of Romans in Cornwall. This is a new excavation. Fort was established in 50 to 55 and continued in use until 75 to 85 AD. So can you see a pattern starting to emerge here, Adam?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the whole site seems to be was abandoned at this point and not occupied again until the 8th century. So I think I said in the last video that it was a place of continual use. And I think actually, does it say here? Oh yeah, this is interesting. The whole site appears to be surrounded by a large polygonal hilltop enclosure that may have Iron Age origins.
Oh.
And I know they found beaker burials there as well.
Okay.
So a lot of occupation before the Romans turned up.
Yes.
And
Absolutely.
I thought this was a minute. Polygonal hilltop enclosure that may have Iron Age origins. There may alternatively
have.
be a Roman military construction. Can you imagine when we say, "Oh, it's Roman,"
Yes.
but it may have been British? People are like, "Oh, no,
No.
you can't
Yes.
say."
Yeah.
You know, I thought that was funny.
Snap those wacky ideas out immediately. It's Roman.
Yeah. So right,
Yeah.
let's go on to the next one. Nanstallen Roman fort. So let's just have a look here. Nanstallen is number 6, which is down here. So we've got two interesting ones we'll look at next to each other. This is Nanstallen and this is Restormal. And you can see they're the most further westerly of these nodes, these important nodes. Right in, modern Cornish heartland. Nanstalen Roman fort is thought to have been occupied from 65 AD to 79 AD. It now remains as earthworks, right?
Ah.
So again, now we'll look at Restormal. This Roman fortlet, again, we're looking at a small one, now exists only as a small square earthwork situated upon a promontory overlooking the River Foy near the village of Restormal in Cornwall. Ba ba ba. It was thought that the site, again, Iron Age hill fort, which was reused by the Romans originally as a defensive military encampment, later possibly as a defended settlement. The finds recovered, which include shards of datable Sabian pottery, suggest a continuous occupation from the mid-1st to the early 4th centuries. Right. So this is interesting. This is the first site we've looked at, other than
Yeah.
Exeter, that has any occupation beyond 80 AD. It lies inside an Iron Age hill fort already, so there was people living there beforehand anyway.
Yeah.
And one thing we talk about is the possibilities suggested by the British records that locals had things built for them by the Romans.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yes.
So what, I think this is very interesting. And even the idea that there was anything military afterwards is still a maybe, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
This one is very small. It's smaller than the one at Nanstalen. So we've got something very small is the only thing remaining, basically, of Romans in this area. And I just want to have a look at this. This is Restormal. This is just next to the Roman site, and this was the site. This is where the Earls of Cornwall, after the Norman conquest, lived.
Oh, right.
Right. This
Okay.
is literally right next door to that Roman site, so it was very important for a long time afterwards as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm with you.
So I think that if the Nanstalen fort was a Roman site and the Restormal fort was where the local leader lived, that's my sort of way of thinking, and that tradition continued for a long time afterwards.
Interesting. Yeah.
I'd love to know if this mound has someone stuck a core drill in it to see if there's anything more ancient than a Norman fort underneath it. But I don't know. I've not read anything about that.
No. Okay.
So
Absolutely. Yeah.
so then we've looked at all these sites that these are meant to be the major nodes of here. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of these sites that are meant to be these major nodes that this road network developed around, and that they were completely abandoned by 85 AD at the latest. So how does this work?
Yeah.
So the general idea given before about why these places, the military withdrew, is the old word Romanization. What does Romanization even mean? Generally given as a top-down change from the people highest up. They're given Latin language, Roman stuff, clothing, housing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And like buildings are really all we can look at in terms of physical remains sometimes, because of stone lasts essentially.
Yeah.
So one thing we look for in Britain is things like villa building, civitas building, colonnade, stuff like that. Colonia, I don't know how you pronounce it. Let's look at villas in Devon and Cornwall. All 4 of them. This one, a lot of these have never been dug, unfortunately.
Right.
These 3 in Devon, all in the east, which borders with Dorset, which is real heavy villa territory. There's loads of them there, and then you get to Devon and they just stop. They're just and Devon is that prime, except for Dartmoor. A lot of Devon is that prime farmland that the Romans came for metals and things, and then they found what amazing breadbasket Britain was basically, and the villa system was put in place. And Devon's got that fine farmland, and there's just no villas whatsoever. You know, Cornwall, one. I
Yeah,
mean,
absolutely. Yeah.
it, it's just so what we'd expect is that these would have been the residents, though, of the local lord. That's just the general idea, the local king or whatever, or chieftain, as they like to say.
Yeah.
The
Yeah,
local
yeah, yeah,
chieftain,
yeah, yeah.
savage in his mud hut, at
Yeah.
least gets his own villa to live in, right? Okay. Well, so how did the people live in Cornwall during the Roman period? Let's have a look. Enclosed settlements. So, during the late Iron Age, from about 400 BC, a new form of settlement appeared in the landscape. They consisted of groups of roundhouses and ancillary buildings forming farmsteads or hamlets, which were enclosed by a bank and ditch, sometimes with 2 or more lines of bank and ditch, less than a hectare, with a simple entranceway formed by a gap in the circuit of a bank and ditch. Many are roughly circular or oval in shape, but rectilinear enclosures are also common. So not everything square is Roman. Remember
Yes.
that. That's a very
Yeah.
good lesson to learn from our mate Carl. Enclosed settlements are frequently sited on hill slopes with their entrance facing down hill. Right, lovely. Although archaeologists traditionally think of enclosed farmstead as synonymous with the Iron Age, peak usage of this form of settlement in Cornwall was in the 2nd and 3rd centuries AD. During the Romano-British period, settlements housed in enclosures were in use right to the end of the Romano-British period, some as late as the 6th century AD. Right.
Nice. Yeah.
So in this wonderful, this so intensely Romanized part of the country that they didn't even need
Yeah.
soldiers in it, people
Mm,
were not living like Romans. They were living in
no.
their barbarous mud huts, right? You can almost say this idea, how hill forts and roundhouses had a bit of a renaissance after the Roman withdrawal from
Yeah.
Britain. Yeah,
Yeah.
you can almost say the tradition was kept alive in Cornwall. Like, they
Yeah.
still
Yeah.
did it. And I've seen before, I think I was even watching like a Time Team rerun or something recently where they said they talked about the pottery where the the Iron Age pottery style of Cornwall, which is very rough type of pottery, continued. They were making that right throughout the 2nd and 3rd centuries AD.
Right.
Right.
Oh,
So
well. Yeah.
so there's
Yeah.
so what Romanization has taken
Yeah.
place? They're
Yeah.
not
No.
building. They're not building stuff. Then there's no soldiers. They're not living in villas. You know, it's this map really does open up way more questions than answers. Just the even before the map of the road system, there's loads of unanswered questions about Romans in the southwest. What happened around 85 AD where they withdrew their troops? What happened? I mean, have a look in this.
I haven't got round to that one yet, actually.
Well, you can see this note in some other Wilson and Blackett works as well. Unfortunately, I can't find the exact quote, but in 79 AD, Gnaeus Julius Agricola made his propraetor or governor of Britain. He fought a series of campaigns against the Picts, traditional enemies of the British, and some very early campaigns in North Wales. According to the Welsh histories, he was eventually driven out of Wales by a king called Barham. According to the official Roman histories, based on the not unbiased accounts of his son-in-law Tacitus, Agricola was recalled rather than defeated. That something was amiss is suggested by the fact that his retirement was cut short when he was poisoned, probably on the orders of the Emperor Domitian, in 93 AD. The man who is believed to have been Agricola's successor to the post-Roman proprietor of Britain, Sallustius Lucullus, was also recalled and met a sticky end in 90 AD, again on the orders of Domitian, this time supposedly for trivial crime of allowing a new spear to be named after him. it seems more likely that his failure at subjugating Britain was his real crime. For at this point, there is an ominous 30-year silence in the Roman records on the subject as of propraetors, and it is hard to avoid the conclusion that, as the Welsh records testify, Britain had to all intents and purposes regained its independence. Indeed, Roman records say that Benassus usurped the empire in Britain. It is clear that this Benassus is identified as King Baram, son of Ceri, who in the genealogy of Iestyn, the son of Gwyrgen, is indeed said to have vanquished the Romans in every engagement. So it'd be really interesting to know what that Roman record is that says Benassus usurped the empire in Britain, because it's not something you can easily find with a Wikipedia search or Google search or something like that. And certainly if you look at lists of governors in Britain, they do fill that 30-year gap with some very tenuous links through names and things like that.
Yeah.
We also don't know that where are the Welsh referring to as Britain and where are the Romans referring to as Britain as well. You know, what areas, what parts of the country.
Absolutely.
They could have had a bit of, you know, if they just pushed them all to the southeast and we think about the traditional Cymric Loegrs line, maybe they just pushed them entirely out of Britain, being not Loegrs essentially.
Sure.
That's one idea, but that's just an idea. But the physical evidence suggests that something's going on here, and Romanization, whatever that means, isn't the answer.
No, and really quite, strikingly, it's not as much as they'd like it to be.
Well, I mean, what does it even mean? It's one of those words where, you know, if you look it up, they say, oh, well, actually, nowadays we think of Romanization as a much more complex and nuanced thing, blah, blah, blah. Okay, but you've just changed the definition of the word rather than changing the word, which is what you should do, is change the word, because the word meant something. Now you've just completely, you know, made an absolute cloud of possibilities about what it could possibly mean. So you can say that anything's Romanization.
It doesn't lend itself to the actual commerce which is happening.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is a kind of imperial view.
Yeah, and you could say, oh well, Romanization in this country means one thing, and in this country it means this thing, and in this area it means that thing. It's like, well, okay, so can we come up with different words to describe what's going on rather than using a blanket term which only obfuscates the truth rather than clarifies it?
Hang on.
And then I just want to finish off again, just this point needs to be made, is that no matter how good a computer model is at telling us where something is the best place to put something, you know, they came up with this image. Or no, this isn't even the final image, but it'll do, because we all know which one I'm talking about, the one that's been on the front page of all these articles about this network discovered. But this is a computer model. It has not been found. So I really do hope this research does lead to a greater investigation. Here we go, a greater investigation of what's going on at this period, at this part of the country. But we can't just stick the information into a computer model with our own biased opinions about what's going on and then accept what comes out as gospel truth.
God, no.
No, I mean, even a couple of things, and I'll just finish on this. When I first saw this map, some things stood out to me. One, that they have some data outside of the limit of the study area. Limit of study area.
What? Oh, what?
Well, I don't. Well, that's not the limit of the study area, is it? Also, this is interesting. This is the River Para. So this is where in the past, where people have said, "Oh, this Wessex king conquered Devon and Cornwall." They probably conquered lands in the east of Devon here, and then the Britons pushed them back to the River Para. The River Para saw a lot of probably a lot of death, basically, between Saxons and Dumnonians. But immediately east of here, where this road apparently is going, is the Somerset Levels. I mean,
Yeah.
where did they put a bloody road through the? This would have all been Fenland at this period. Like, what's being suggested here? I mean, I'd love to see the details about what they think might be going on, but at first glance, it seems ridiculous. You've also got several routes here going right through Dartmoor, and if there's another complaint I have about this paper is that this is the best scale map you get, and this is the entire region. You know, I want to be zooming in and seeing where they think these paths are going over the moor, because I know this area, and there may be some very ancient ways that go across there, but again, are they Roman? I mean,
Huh. Yes, for sure.
both Exeter and Cowstock have, as we saw on the on the official pages for them, have pre Roman use, right?
Yeah.
And the people who lived in those places probably would have traveled to each other. Do you think it took the Romans turning up and them going, they made the journey they always used to make between these two places, and then they did it once over the Roman road, and they were like, God, why didn't we think of that? I've been, sprawling through estuaries and climbing up hillsides and pushing my way through forests, and why didn't I just build a road? What's going on?
I know. Yeah.
Seems ridiculous to me. So, yeah, are these roads even there? Are they Roman? And what the hell were the Romans doing for here for only 40 years anyway? What's going on? And
Precisely.
that's why I think this paper really does open up more questions than it answers. So I hope you enjoyed that, folks. I'd like to hear what you think.
Very exciting stuff. Fantastic. Thanks a lot, Peter.
Great.
Great.